Okay, we're getting the door here. So all four of us are from Purdue University, and we have various titles. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in our session is 2 short activities that involve you. So hopefully this will keep you awake. But we also thought it would be fun to do something with our titles. So we've adapted something that we often do with names for all of us here now. So hopefully you all have a handout, and you can take a minute to scribble down answers. Interpretation of the questions is fully acceptable. And then we'd like you, we're small, but still for the sake of time, we won't have everybody speak about their answers, but we'd like you to turn to somebody next to you and exchange what you wrote. So we'll give you a few minutes to, we're not collecting these, so if you don't want to write, if you just want to ad-lib, that's fine. But we'll give you a few minutes and then encourage you to go ahead and talk to somebody. And for those who are watching the live stream, we have the exercise on the slide. So go ahead and turn to somebody and just share your information, please. It is messed up. No, it wasn't like that. Dang.
Do you want me to go ahead and switch?
I can, yeah.
What happened?
It's up. You're okay. This one's no better.
It's not?
It's no better. Okay, I should get them back for the sake of moving, but yeah.
We'll
Okay.
fix this.
I'll just wait till it's fixed. Don't think we're going to run into others. Let's just advance it.
You go ahead and do the activity. I'll fix this.
I have my debriefing questions there.
It's doing some weird thing. There we go.
There we
Okay.
go. Okay. I got it.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hate to interrupt. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us on. So a few questions. How did it feel to share this information with each other? Intimate? Personal? Mm-hmm. Were there any surprises in what people chose to share? Somebody care to share that with the group?
When I was speaking with my colleague here, she said her title and she's like, "You're not one of those, are you?" She was afraid of offending.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
I was surprised to hear that part of her title she doesn't do anymore.
So it's still there, but another.
I was surprised that my partner, I missed the instructions, I came in a little late, so I was surprised to learn that my partner's take on it, which included both professional and personal, was not in the instructions. And it was great because I learned a lot more about her that way.
Right. So you could actually interpret something here, right? Did you learn anything by doing this activity? What did you learn?
I learned what I wanted to be when I grow up.
Yes, me too when I've done this. Yes, okay. Other learning?
I don't think I ever reflected on my title quite these ways, so that was helpful to think about.
Yeah. How is this introduction different than what we might have done if I just said, please introduce yourself to somebody next to you?
We didn't lead with institutions. That was like the last bit we got to actually.
Okay.
Where our title was associated with in our group.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of more personal in that we revealed how a person feels about the title, and especially when we asked how do you imagine it to be, what do you like it to be.
Yes, it says a lot.
Not even this question didn't really elicit directly, but it came up.
Thank you.
And most probably I wouldn't use my title. I mean, I wouldn't say my title to the other person. Yeah, I mean, just, my name and, affiliation, and that's it.
Right, right. So there are a number of things that you got from this, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. But one of the reasons we did this is a symposium, and we wanted you all to have had exchanged words with at least one other person about themselves before we start, because we assume that the discussion at the end is as important as anything that we present. And so we want you to know that your voices matter, whatever your titles or whatever your dream titles. And this also comes from a site, a resource that we'll be sharing with you later. So you know our format, and we have a number of presenters, and we're integrating with a few little pieces that will tell you a little bit more about Purdue as an institution and some of the resources that we have there. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to start not with my presentation, but with a very brief introduction to the unit that I work for, Sylmar. You'll hear the full title in a minute. It's a mouthful. So Purdue is a land-grant institution. How many of you are familiar with Purdue? Okay, so STEM, ag, sciences, land-grant, very, very large and still growing. Full, what? Cold, yes, right now we are very happy. At least we've all talked about this. Cold. So about 2 hours from Chicago in Indiana, land grant. So there are a number of things of the land grant mission that we carry out, but we have close to 45,000 students now, and about 20% of those are international students. To understand how my unit came into being, this is just a quick look at the growth of total international enrollment. You can see it really starts shooting up in 2011, 2012, okay? There was a sense at that time with that recruitment that there needed to be institution-wide change. The culture of the institution needed to shift, both so that those students would feel like they belonged, but also there was increasing recognition that the stereotypical Indiana students who came to Purdue could benefit from more intercultural skills. And in fact, in 2012, the Purdue Faculty Senate decided that intercultural competence was going to be an embedded learning outcome. How that was going to happen was another matter. There was also a priority shift away from simply recruiting numbers in study abroad or study away to working on intercultural skills. And this was both top down and bottom up. So the organization within Purdue that I work for is the Center for Intercultural Learning, Mentorship, Assessment, and Research. You can see our vision there. Our mission statement is rather long. I'll emphasize the bridging across difference. At this point, we have 6 people. 2 of us are here, but I will say that the other 2 people who are presenting today in the symposium actually preceded us by quite a bit and in doing intercultural work. And if it weren't for their efforts, in addition to the top-down efforts, I don't think Sylmar would exist. You can see we have a number of different specialists. We have liaisons in every college around intercultural learning and also for international programs. And we have several programs, and I'm just going to run through these very quickly. This one focuses on professional development for on-campus teaching and mentoring, and I apologize, this is not what it looked like when we submitted it, so some of you might have experienced those shifts too. We have worldview workshops, which particularly target advisors and public-facing staff. We have a few faculty participants, but because they're working, they're self-selecting and they like these, a series of 6 for a certificate program, because they're working with students who may have practices they're not familiar with. And then we have a number of programs for students, including the SAIL program, the middle one there, that my colleague is going to talk about in a little bit. We do a lot of assessment, and in fact, assessment was one way that Sylmar began. We support many tools, but the one that you'll hear about later today and the one that is currently most widely used on campus, in fact, we have one college, the Polytechnic, that is using it with all entering first-year students, and then again with graduating seniors, is the Intercultural Development Inventory, or the IDI. And if you're not familiar with the Continuum, the Intercultural Development Continuum, just very briefly here, it suggests that people tend to be at different points on an orientation from a monocultural mindset towards an intercultural mindset, okay? And there are different stages or orientations along the way. And so this particular instrument helps place where people are on that. We also have some research projects and the Hubicle, for which you received a flyer and that we'll be talking about later. So I'd like to move into my presentation now. What do you want students to learn? Faculty-led programs. Just to situate myself briefly, I'm the newest comer to Purdue and to Sylmar. I've only been there for about a year and 3 months. This was my background. I taught in a small liberal arts college, led a lot of programs. But a lot of the driving questions for me that came out of my experience in the classroom had to do with what students took away 10 and 20 years down the road. They weren't going to remember how to conjugate a French verb. And frankly, I didn't really care about that as much either. I also was aware of my own limitations in navigating intercultural encounters. And I wondered how I could support students to navigate those when I was uncomfortable. And I also wanted to bridge differences within my department and the institution to create institutional change. So my arrival at Purdue and at Sylmar was very much about my own personal and professional growth. So coming back to how Sylmar and Purdue as an institution decided to address intercultural learning. They started with study abroad or study away, which seems like a pretty easy target, right? You assume there's an immersion going on, something should happen. And you can see that there was an 85% increase in participation of primarily departmental or faculty-led short-term programs in a 5-year period. So obvious low-hanging fruit, but there was also an awareness of what this book says. Have any of you seen this book before? Okay. One person. So this book primarily argues that immersion doesn't guarantee anything. It's really a myth that contact will inevitably lead to intercultural learning, just like you would drown going underwater. So rather, humans learn and develop by being immersed in cultural difference, by reflecting on how they and others frame that experience, and then by reframing their experience, which means that to help students interact more effectively and appropriately, educators need to intervene. Key argument, key understanding. Now I'm going to twist this a little bit. Institutions also learn and develop in a similar manner. Okay, by being immersed in their institutional practices, by reflecting on how various stakeholders frame the experience of those practices, and then by reframing those experiences and maybe even changing those practices. And that's the brief story that I'm going to tell you about Sylmar. So to help institutions achieve their goals more effectively and appropriately, administrators need to intervene. But like I said, that needs to come from all sides. So one of the ways that we had, Purdue decided to intervene in study abroad included assessment at the very beginning. There was a worksheet developed, I won't show it to you, but it was required for all faculty study abroad program applications. And that worksheet meant that leaders had to tick off which intercultural learning outcome they were going to embed in their program, such as curiosity, empathy, openness, backwards design, what activities were they going to use, and assess for it, and then turn in that assessment. The worksheet had 21 research-derived assessment tools listed on it to give faculty a lot of choice. So of course this created challenges. For any of you who work in faculty development, which is primarily what I do, there's the question of authority and who owns the curriculum, right? How could a non-academic dean tell faculty what they were going to do in their classes, even if those classes took place in Costa Rica or China, right? Also, who sees that program report anyway? Is this administrivia, right? Or somebody else's research? And then fear, like, I'm not tenured. What happens if I don't make my target intercultural learning outcome? There were also disciplinary challenges. My colleague researched the interests in the different disciplines, for example, in intercultural learning, and there tended to be a really different focus. And one of the challenges of that is it meant that trying to give all faculty all the options possible on one worksheet meant it was overwhelming for faculty to take in. Too many options. I come from a discipline, comparative literature, that is rather skeptical of psychometric tools. So that is, again, a hurdle for some of the faculty. And then there's lack of familiarity with backward design, establishing an outcome moving backward, and with assessment. The third challenge, of course, is time, right? That's always a challenge. This meant filling out an extra sheet, data collection, plus including the outcomes. So the way that Purdue addressed this was creating intercultural pedagogy grants so that program leaders could actually study these things in advance and then receive discretionary funds for themselves and have the opportunity to apply for program grants that would actually help reduce costs for students. These grants started in the spring of 2016 with 18 participants. There are, and it kept growing at different moments. And by this month, there were 215 trained program leaders on campus. Our evaluation from the leader's perspective is, in generally, the funding's appreciated, can imagine that, and they value that they see their students learn, because now they're assessing it, and that makes them value that they've learned how to do that. Intercultural learning has actually become a focus for several of them, their research. Of course, the time challenge is still felt, and the verbal feedback that I've heard is everything from, this is great, to, can you just help me get my 2,000, right? But there's been an impact, and this shows you, if you can see the dark here is no training. This is using the IDI and more than 7 points shift suggests a significant change. And on the far right, those are faculty leaders who had a lot of training. And you can see the top lighter part, 72% of their students made a 7% shift or more on a pre-post IDI assessment of their intercultural development. Additionally, if you look at more qualitative data, the bronze on the left are the untrained leaders' results for their students in the areas of curiosity, self-awareness, and openness, and those on the right had training. So you see a significant difference when we invest in faculty. As a result of this, there is new structural support. Namely, now all study abroad leaders need to have one-on-one consultations with those of us who work in Sylmar. So there are a couple challenges that come with that. Authority and time is again a question. The disciplinary perspectives that are brought by those folks who haven't gone through the intercultural pedagogy training means that they often have a bias towards quantitative or qualitative, and we have to figure out how to help them work with that when there's a steep learning curve, often, for a 1-hour consultation. But last year, we had at least 115 consultations in our office with all these leaders. The ways we're working to address those challenges now are to offer options for experienced or IPG-trained leaders, so maybe they don't need to come see us every year, although some of those are the ones who want to because they want to talk, because now they're excited about what's happening. We're sharing information better. We're letting leaders know that we actually do look at their reports. We assess that data. We use that data, right? And we're also supporting autonomy, and I'll say something about that in one of our colleges in just a minute. In an individual consultation, our strategies are to literally ask the faculty, what do you want students to learn? Because they wouldn't be taking students off campus if they didn't believe that there was value in doing that. So inevitably, curiosity or openness or something else matters already. They just haven't articulated that to themselves. We direct them towards specific tools that are relatively easy to use depending on their biases towards different types of assessment. We introduce experiential activities, talk about pre-departure opportunities or how to integrate opportunities into existing program activities, and then try to discern what feels manageable to them and support them in what they will own rather than throw all that they could do at them. Our conclusions are that it really does pay to focus on faculty ownership of intercultural learning, and that study abroad is a toehold for embedding intercultural learning in on-campus curriculums, the curricula as well. And we have faculty now who are telling us, because I realized I could do this there, I'm doing it here. That reflection and reframing the process leading to institutional change requires listening to the faculty and assessing student learning. We need to work on both sides at once. We definitely observe impacts on discourse and practices across campus, but we're definitely still in process. And this is the flyer that just came out, I saw it last week, for the Health and Human Sciences study abroad, and they added intercultural learning to their fair, which is pretty amazing. And they're working on finding ways of supporting their own faculty so that they don't necessarily have to come through Sylmar, which suggests that we're actually achieving what we hope, which is full ownership of intercultural learning. Thank you.